Hey everyone, this is Godzilla91 here to do another toy review, and today we'll be looking at a certain figure I've been carrying since I was a kid. That, of course, being the original Godzilla from Gojira. To start off, let's begin with his history. As you all may remember, the original Godzilla was made from American hydrogen bomb tests back from the Bikini Atoll in the Pacific Ocean, and that throughout the beginning of the film we would see him destroying various ships in the waters of Japan. So far, this causes a search group to be sent to Odo Island, where some of the survivors have washed ashore. The islanders think that the shipwrecks were caused by Godzilla and that there's this folklore where he would come ashore to eat them. So in order to stop this, they would perform this little exorcism so that Godzilla doesn't come back. Then a storm arrives on the island and much of the village is destroyed by it. Of course, we're all aware that it was Godzilla who did it. After hearing about this, a group of researchers decided to go back to the island and try to find any evidence. This leads us to the first shot that we see of Godzilla as he looms over towards the natives and scientists, and turning away back into the ocean. After the discovery, the military decides that it was best to kill Godzilla with depth charges. Of course, this does nothing as we see Godzilla come out of the waters in a minute at Tokyo Bay. After that, Godzilla appears again, and this time he actually causes some major havoc across Tokyo Bay. It's not until then that the military decides to use some electric towers to kill the creature, or at least electrocute him. Once he comes back up from the ocean, he goes through the electric fence like it was paper mache, and for the first time we get to see him use his atomic breath. As far as I know, the rest of the film just shows Godzilla destroying Tokyo everywhere in his path, killing innocents of lives and burning down lots of buildings, just looking as if it was just devastating. Not to mention that the music that plays along with it still gives me chills to this day. Afterwards, he decides to go back to the ocean where he rests from the mayhem that he caused. Of course, he's unaware that two divers, one of them being Shirasawa, floats down so that he can activate the oxygen destroyer, which was a weapon that Dr. Shirasawa invented, and that it would basically suffocate anything with the lack of oxygen, and then it would disintegrate them. This proves to be a success as we see Godzilla suffocating to death from the chemicals, and that he rises up from the surface to roar defiantly before dying out in the ocean. The last we see of him is when he disintegrates down to the bone and then into nothing. Of course, once the film series gets rebooted, instead of the bones being disintegrated from Godzilla, they instead survive, and were used to create Mechagodzilla, or Kiryu. But that's another story for another time. Now moving on to detail. As you can see, he has a dark gray and white tone center around his whole body, and that you can see some white spots on his chest, his claws, and his toes, and even his knees. But what's interesting is that while some merchandising has him look like this, he was, in the film, the suit's skin color was actually dark brown, but it was a bit bizarre when I first saw that and looking at it now, I wouldn't mind Bandai making a figure out of it, if they ever have the chance, that is. But moving on. If you look for a minute, there are some small scratches seen on his head and his toes, and on the bottom on his feet. There are some lettering that show that the figure was made in 1998, if you could see it, that is. But you probably wouldn't, but oh well. Now for the articulation on this guy. Not much, as his arms can move around 360 degrees. The tail, on the other hand, doesn't have that much and is simply glued on there. Wouldn't be best to tear it off, but just be careful not to do it. Probably best not to. Overall, this guy is pretty rare to find around the internet, like really rare. But if you can find him, he would be around like 35 on the internet, that is. The best option is to find him at either a comic book store that sells Godzilla toys or at a convention center, with any kaiju figures that you can find, or on eBay, which I use mostly. All in all, I find this figure to be one of my personal favorites, and if you happen to be a fan of this suit, or at least the original film itself, then I totally recommend it. So until then, I will see you all later. This is Godzilla 91, signing off.